Hi, my name is Adam. I'm a postdoc at the University of Minnesota. And the thing that I like best about my job is I get to study a disease that I am passionately interested in. I myself have type 1 diabetes. I have family members that have the disease. And we get to investigate the fundamental mechanisms of how the beta cells in the pancreas are destroyed. And more importantly, how to try to stop that process as it happens in real time in the mouse model of the disease. Before I became an immunologist, I did a separate master's in physiology, and I worked for a company for a couple of years. There were a couple fields that I thought I wanted to be conversant in before I jumped into immunology, which incorporates a lot of physiology, a lot of different things going on. So I wanted to be prepared as a scientist before I jumped into graduate school, essentially. One way that I got into immunology research as a field is as I was just a biology general undergraduate, and I have type 1 diabetes, which I want to study as a disease. So I first did a master's degree in physiology, which is just broad, how does the body work? And during that time was the whole stem cells are a huge field. Let's see if we can just cure diseases by replacing cells. So I worked at a small company that did stem cell research for a couple of years. In the course of that job, light bulb turns on. Whatever you do to replace these cells in the body, you're already autoimmune against them. You're going to kill them again. What does that? The immune system. What cell does that? The T cell. So that's how I got to transplantation immunology. Very, very, very selfish directly, but it's a vehicle for studying these fundamental processes. So my own work is looking at a lot of how the target cell can protect itself. So what I've been trying to learn more about is the environment around that sort of deadly dance of what cytokines influence the T cells, what cytokines influence the beta cells, and how can you kind of get beyond the T cell, beyond the beta cell, and influence that environment to sort of skew the outcome of that cell-cell interaction. My own personal contribution, since I'm very early as a postdoc, is probably very small at this point. Probably from my graduate school work, my advisor and I are just at the point of submitting a paper where we're looking at the rejection of transplants independent of MHC expression on the transplant. So T cells interact with MHC. This is a foundational thing that we all learn in the textbooks. But in the setting of a transplant where the recipient's already autoimmune against the transplant, those rules may not apply as strictly, which is both interesting, and now we need to figure out what that is. I've been to a bunch of talks about how T cells are activated, how T cells kill their targets, how targets can try to protect themselves from that destruction, and kind of the deadly dance back and forth between cytotoxic cells and parenchymal cells. One main thing that I'd like out of the meeting is networking, both with colleagues from school, colleagues from my own institution, and others whose papers I've been reading for the past several years who I'd like to see more in person, how they think, what's their process, what do they see as their next steps, and how does that differ from what I think would be useful, and how could we potentially even collaborate? Like, searching for collaborators essentially is another main purpose.